What up everybody? I'm back from Japan. It was an incredible trip. I might make a video on it, I might not. I didn't want to turn the channel into a travel vlogging video, but quick update for my PCT permit. I didn't get one, so I was a little bit bummed, but I kind of knew it was coming. It's not, crushing my spirits at all that I didn't get one. I still have 15 that will be given out in early January that I'm going to shoot for, and honestly, if I don't get one there, then I'm just going to do it permit by permit and do it the hard way. So I am still determined to do this trail. Not getting a permit's not going to stop me in any way, shape, or form. You can still do the trail continuously. It's just a little bit more logistically challenging. But anyway, that's not why you clicked on this video. You came here today to understand the 5 things that I wish I knew and learned in hindsight from backpacking over the last 2 years. Now, 2 years isn't a lot of experience, but I have gotten some miles under my belt, and through that time, I've discovered just some things that would have saved me a lot of money and have just increased my performance in general on trail. Yes, these are subjective. I'm not claiming to be the guru or the know-all. This is just, once again, my experiences and what I think could be beneficial to others that are trying to be more efficient at backpacking or just improve their backpacking and what I've learned over my experience. Number 1, nutrition. I know that backpackers are notoriously known for not having the best nutrition. However, really this doesn't make sense to me. At first, I tried to buy a bunch of cheap and processed food when I would get on trail because that was the thing to do, was to eat M&Ms and to snack on processed foods, and it didn't really matter because you were burning the calories. And while I'm not saying that you can't do that, I'm just saying that there was clearly a benefit for me on how I performed eating processed sugary foods on trail versus stepping my nutrition up. Really, this hit me after I started putting in longer days and noticed that my performance started deteriorating when I ate like shit versus when I actually stepped up my nutritional input. And what I mean by this is I would notice that if I did an 18-mile day and ate processed sugary foods the entire time, I just simply did not have the longevity that I would have if I was eating different things that had a higher nutritional value on a day where I did 25 miles. I noticed this in my joints, I noticed this in my cognitive ability to think, I noticed this in my endurance, and just my all-around performance on a day by day when you're doing something that's so physically strenuous to the body. Now, if you eat processed foods and you can do 30 miles a day, power to you. This was just different for me. Make me perform better on trail would be things like quick oats, peanut butter, nuts, dried fruits, protein bars that are calorically dense, that don't have a bunch of artificial ingredients. And one thing that I absolutely came to love on trail, they're a little bit pricey, but the green belly bars. These things are 700 calories a pack. They taste absolutely amazing, and there is not one processed ingredient in the entire thing. Some general things that I avoid from a nutritional standpoint are any sort of seed oils like vegetable oil, canola oil. If you look into seed oils and how they're made, they're extremely high in linoleic acid, which in short is just going to increase inflammation and really just ruin your body metabolically. So I really don't eat anything that has any sort of seed oil or just anything that's high in linoleic acid, which is most processed oils. Number 2, have a plan. Now I know this sounds extremely obvious, but when I first started backpacking, sometimes I would think, oh, it's just a 30-mile loop, it's fine, I won't tell anyone where I'm going, I won't download the maps, I'll be fine. Let's just say I got into some situations where the trail would fork off, I didn't have maps, and honestly, it could have ended up being a really bad situation. If you're going out on even a 24-hour trip that's really short and fast, let somebody know where you are, because if you aren't back by your expected date and you do get hurt on trail and you don't have a Garmin in reach, how is anyone supposed to know where you are? Yes, you can hope that some random stranger walks by you and finds you, but that's not always guaranteed. So just have a plan, be prepared in general, and don't just think, I'll go out into the woods willy-nilly and improvise, because while you might get away with it, if something were to happen, you're going to definitely wish you never put yourself in that situation. Number 3, start out with smaller trails. By smaller, I mean less distance. So start out with a 15-mile loop and see how you feel. How did your body feel when you pushed it to that limit? Was it fine? Could you do way more? It's always better to start small than bite off more than you can chew. For example, I remember when I first got into backpacking, I thought, hey, I'll go out and do this 35-mile loop in Colorado in the Lost Creek Wilderness. And I had gotten about 19 miles in on my first day, and I woke up absolutely wrecked. My feet were sore, my body hurt, I didn't sleep that well, and I remember thinking, like, did I bite off more than I can chew here? Is this more than I should have done for myself? And it was a little bit intimidating and somewhat terrifying, right? Because once you go in, you have to come out. If I would have started smaller, I would have realized that doing an 18-mile day for me at that time was a lot for me. And I could have started smaller and understood my limits and slowly progressed from there. So I think all in all, the message here is start smaller and then move up as you go along and progress, because if you start out with 15 and it's too small, you can always up it the next weekend to 25 or 20 and push yourself from there, but you can do it in a really, really safe way. Number 4, gear. This is a controversial topic because some people don't think you should pay a lot for gear, some people think you should. And I think it's somewhere right in the middle. But you need to know where to skimp out on gear and where not to. So you can sometimes get away with cheap gear and it honestly ends up being better than some of the name brand, more expensive things. For example, for me, some of those items have been pillows, headlamps, tent stakes, and jackets. However, on that very opposite end of the spectrum, there are things that I think people try to skimp out on that completely ruin their experience and make them end up having a terrible time on trail, where really you should have just spent the money up front and just saved yourself the hassle of buying multiple pieces of semi-expensive cheap gear that end up totaling being more than just buying a piece of quality gear from the start. Some things that you should never ever skip out on when it comes to gear on the trail, in my opinion, are your sleep system and your pack. Now, why do I say your backpack? Well, one, because if you have a backpack that is cheap and super heavy and honestly just not enjoyable to use or pack down or carry around on your back, then you're automatically going to have a bad time from the start. And the other reason why I mention sleep gear is because take it from someone who tried to skimp out on sleep gear at first. I saw my first Thermarest pad and my Nemo pad and said there's no way in hell I'm paying $200 for an inflatable pad. This led me down the rabbit hole of chasing really, really heavy, uncomfortable pads on Amazon. And while I'm not saying there isn't a good cheap pad out there, I'm saying I've tried 3 or 4 of them and I ended up spending more on trying to cheap out on a pad than I would have if I had just dropped the money on a quality pad from the beginning. Another benefit of actually dropping the money on a quality pad up front or a sleep system is most of the time these reputable gear companies like Nemo will actually insure the gear for life. So if you rip it or if you happen to damage it, they will fix it within reason and you won't have to spend the money if you pop a cheap pad on just replacing it in general. Another last reason why I don't think you should skimp out on your sleep system is because it's how you literally recover and feel on trail. If you go out in the wilderness for 4 days or 3 days expecting to have a good time running on 4 hours of restless sleep a night, you're not going to have a good time. So just figure out, hey, what's a good sleep system that might cost me a little bit of money up front, but I promise you your mood, your energy, and your overall experience will be so much better if you just put the cash out up front as opposed to trying to find a cheap workaround. And lastly, Number 5, push yourself. Now, I know this might kind of contradict what I was saying earlier about starting out small, but that's not the message here. The message is that if you really do stay in the same realm of complacency, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm not saying that you have to do this. I'm just saying that if you want to put in more miles, if you want to do more trails and experience more and get more from your backpacking experience, I think that it's really, really valuable to somewhat up your limits. When I first started backpacking and I did a 15-mile day, I was absolutely dead. Now I find myself doing much bigger days and feeling a-okay the next morning. I couldn't have done this if I didn't slowly up the bar for myself, not in a ridiculously fast fashion. I'm not saying I just woke up one day and started putting in insane miles, but I slowly kept challenging myself to go do a little bit harder of a trail, or go a little bit longer, or try and push myself a little bit harder that day. And I feel like the culmination of all those experiences ended up allowing me to go do things that I never thought I'd be able to do, like the Uinta Highline Trail in 4 days. So this isn't to sit here and try and humble brag. I'm just saying that start small, find your limit, and then slowly challenge yourself from there. And you'll find that once you get more stamina and find that you're building your skill on trail, it becomes more fun and more addicting than you can ever imagine. And honestly, it's just a great form of exercise, and it's great for your health if you do it within reason. Those are my 5 tips on what has improved my trail experience over my last 2 years of backpacking. But I would love to know from you all if you feel like I left something out that's maybe helped you on trail, increase your experience. I really, really appreciate all the support on my last video and all the gear recommendations. There was such a wealth of information that I hadn't even thought of that I got from you all, and it's so cool to see the community engaging with me on this channel. I'm extremely humbled, you guys, and I appreciate that. And thank you all so much for watching once again. See you on the next one.